Greetings, Sentinels fans! I do want to get started on talking about the Definitive Edition, but I do want to finish this series first. But, thankfully, there's only this one and the next one. Let's get started, shall we? Today I'll be talking about the 5 non-Freedom 5 heroes in the core game. So I will call them the Prime Wardens and Auxiliaries, as 3 of them, Haka, Fnatic, and Tempest, are members, while Ra and Visionary are fairly common allies of the team. Let us begin with the Auxiliaries. So, let's get started with Ra. Ra, god of the sun and the scorching desert. He has 3 variants. His base version is the basic deal 2 damage power. It's serviceable for the beginning of the fight, though Ra has other powers that are better. Now Ra's Horus of the New Horizons variant, aside from giving him a magnificent beard, allows him to mill through his deck in order to find those better powers by drawing 3 cards and discarding 2. This sacrifices his consistent damage for just churning through his deck looking for good stuff. Useful for getting those aforementioned powers. And then we have Ra's Setting Sun variant, for when you feel like Leroy Jenkinsing your way to victory or death. Or more likely both. This one has a power where Ra deals 2 irreducible fire damage to all baddies. And considering the power boost he has access to, and you are punching through defenses without breaking a sweat, that can do quite a number on the baddies. However, this comes at the cost of having Ra deal himself 2 irreducible fire damage, he has to destroy one of his own ongoing cards if he has any, and the top 2 cards of both his deck and discard piles are removed from the game. Blood Mage Lifeline is looking at Ra going, dude, you okay? This is the version of Ra you play when you don't care about getting killed and just want to ruin a bad guy's day. Though there actually is a surprising amount of interaction with his own deck here. First, the Staff of Ra will not get destroyed by the power because it is not an ongoing card. Flesh of the Sun God can have him ignore self-damage, and Solar Flare can boost all that damage, and you can use the destroy ongoing portion to eliminate it if you don't plan on paying its health cost. Also, if you don't like all the downsides this power is giving you, then Ra still has a whole bunch of powers that he can use instead. You could save the innate for special occasions if you want. So with that being said, Setting Sun is my favorite and, in my opinion, the best Ra. Pour one out for the Setting Sun. Now it is time to look at Visionary and her 3 variants. Her powers are the most wide-ranging of conventional psionic powers, so it makes sense that her 3 variants are very different, putting more focus on specific abilities. Her base version has it so one hero draws 2 cards and then discards a card, highlighting her use in communication and teamwork. This is nice for getting the cards you need for both you and your friends, but is otherwise not too remarkable. It is very nice with just the core game, where options to help your friends draw cards are fairly limited, but becomes easier to accomplish with each expansion. Her second variant is Dark Visionary, displaying her evil personality, while still fighting on the good side. Not full Dark Mind yet. She's still hanging around and playing the long game. Or you might say the Vanessa long game. This version of her leans into more of her visions. She can use a power to look at the top 2 cards of a deck, be it hero, villain, or environment, and then chooses one card to put on top of the deck and the other to put on the bottom. If you remember my personal ban list, this effect, and effects that are similar to it, made it to number 2 with my personal ban list. To me, this effect is so powerful that it takes away a lot of the fun of the game. The villain needs to have some kind of surprise in store to keep things interesting. Heck, if you use one of Visionary's vision cards, then Dark Visionary can mess with both the villain and environment in a round. I see everything. And last, we have Visionary Unleashed, an attempt to turn her into a damage dealer. As you can probably tell from how her deck is set up, but damage isn't a primary job for Visionary. Usually just when you need an extra push, or if you don't have anything better in mind. If Visionary is your primary damage dealer, you're having a very weird game. Unleashed allows for some hurting, though it requires setup. When you use her power, she will hit someone with an amount of psychic damage equal to the amount of ongoing she has in play, plus 1. This, of course, does mean that she needs time to build up the bigger hits, and enough luck for her to draw the ongoing she needs to power up. I do like that this variant makes me want to play some cards that I don't put to the table very often. It is also one of the few times where I place Twist the Ether on Visionary herself, rather than using it to weaken the main villain. Is this optimal? Probably not, but I think it's more fun. Pair it with Demoralization and her base power and she can do some work. However, as she wasn't built to be a damage dealer, there are plenty of occasions where her other powers might be preferable. Heck, you can use Mental Divergence for retrieving her ongoing cards that get destroyed, so you can power up her base power some more. For Visionary, my favorite variant is Visionary Unleashed, even though that one might be the least effective version, based on how her deck is built. I do like all the interactions with her deck, and I personally have a preference for dealing damage over being supportive. Her most powerful variant is, of course, Dark Visionary, as her consistent deck peaking is one of those things that makes the game much, much easier. Now, let's move on to the Righteous Paladin, possibly the character most likely to make me piss myself in fear. Fnatic. As with all Prime Wardens, she has 4 variants. Her base version has her deal 1 target, 1 melee, and 1 radiant damage. So 2 damage to 1 target, or 4 if you have a persistent damage boost on her. Simple damage dealing power that scales very well. Now normally using Absolution is better, but if you have a persistent +2 on Fnatic, then her base power will deal 6 damage when Absolution is only dealing 5. Nice and simple. After that we get Redeemer Fnatic, a more defensive version for this generally offensive character. This may seem like a strange choice, but at the best of times, Fnatic can be a bit reckless. She isn't without her defenses, and is therefore much easier to keep alive than Knife, but she will likely get very hurt. This new base power will let her heal a point of damage, as well as give her an extra card draw. And it's this card draw that interests me more. Fnatic has a lot of run-of-the-mill cards, but a few amazing cards. But there is no guarantee that you will get her best stuff, especially Wrathful Retribution, as there is only 1 copy of that card in her deck. This power gives her the extra push to find those great cards, and gives her more staying power while you wait for that nice stuff. Prime Warden's Fnatic returns Fnatic to her recklessness, giving her a power that will make her deal herself 3 radiant damage in exchange for her to play a card off the top of her deck and give a power use to a hero. So you have the negative of the self-damage, which could be a stealthy positive for Wrathful Retribution, the positive of the power use, and the gamble of a mystery card play. This can get you going with very powerful turns, but at the risk of playing cards you don't want played, either because they are more trouble than they are worth, or because you would rather save them for later. It is a very sad thing to use this power on turn 1 and have it play Wrathful Retribution for a pitiful 3 damage. This power does combo well off of Sacrosanct Martyr, since that power is fueled by radiant damage dealt to Fnatic, and not just from its own effect. So if you want, and don't mind getting hurt, you can have Fnatic use the base power, deal herself the 3 damage, and get that card play, and then have her grant herself a power use for Martyr, take another 5 damage, and deal 1 instance of 8 damage to the poor soul unfortunate enough to piss her off. Or, if you want to be stingy, you can just take 1 damage off of Martyr and deal 4 instead. And of course Fnatic has that safety net, as well as a desire for low health. Finally, we have the most metal version of Fnatic, though oddly enough wearing the least metal. We have Extreme Fnatic. Her power in this version is not one, but it can be a fun one. This power has Fnatic deal 1 target 1 point of damage, and then all damage dealt by Fnatic until the end of her next turn is redirected towards that target. Yep, she singles out 1 target for special attention, and then focuses all her energy on that one. Now in terms of damage, this is a double-edged sword, as sometimes a new target comes up and you want to switch targets, and well, Fnatic is kind of stuck with her original target. The power itself deals pitiful damage, but on your next turn, if you have area damage available or an instance of self-harm coming up, it will all go to your victim. Now since self-harm effects didn't hit Fnatic, or in the case of Embolden the other hero, then Fnatic loses the card after the redirect, but it's still fun to do, especially if you have no intention of keeping the card. Holy Nova also gets a nice boost for every baddie on the field, almost effectively acting as another Grace Under Fire, with the added benefit of multiplying damage based off damage boosts. Great way for nuking a team villain early. However, I do not think there is quite enough cards in Fnatic's deck to take advantage of this, as it probably wasn't built with this effect in mind. And if you aren't in a target-rich environment, you can get limited use out of Holy Nova. Against standalone villains, or if you don't have the right cards for taking advantage of it, you are generally better off finding your sword and using that. Now for all those, I have difficulty picking out favorites, as they all have some fun to offer. I do think that Prime Warden's Fnatic is the best. That one has the most fun with its benefits and drawbacks. And now it is time to beat your chest and show your muscles. It's time for Haka. 4 variants again. His base version has the simple deal 2 damage power. Good basic punches, easily replaced by his dex powers. His unique promo is Eternal Haka, the one who has tragically outlived all his friends and humanity in general. He moved his approach to a more contemplative one. His power makes him draw a card and gives him the option to discard a Haka card in order to draw 2 more. As one of the most fun strategies for Haka is to shove his hand full of as many cards as you can for Haka battle, this can be very good for that. Say you don't need a Haka of Defend or a Haka of Restoration, then you can chuck those in favor of filling your hand. You will need to search your deck for other means of damage, but that shouldn't be too hard. Prime Warden's Haka plays with his stances a bit. The power allows him to play a card, which can be used normally if you like. But if this card is a Haka, then you can actually pass off the benefits of that Haka to a friend if you want. This opens up Haka to be more supportive, providing healing and defense for his friends. Though, honestly, just playing an extra card is generally good enough. Extreme Prime Warden's Haka showcases his defense even more. When he uses this power, he selects a hero to defend. Any damage that would go to that hero would go to Haka instead. And if Haka gets hurt from this redirect, then he heals a point of damage. That is actually a pretty sneaky way to have a damage reduction of 1 and bypass irreducible damage, since an irreducible 1 will still be a net 0. Haka's Tamoko puts in more work here as well, shielding Haka and Haka's friend, putting a tentative -2 damage to all attacks directed towards his friend. This redirect also works with hero attacks, so this ability can be great with heroes that sometimes do self-harm. Lifeline be like, I need to use my life essence for my magic. And then Haka be like, hey man, self-harm might be extreme, but it's not cool. I have life to spare, might as well use me. Out of all these versions, I find myself gravitating towards Eternal Haka, though I think either Prime Wardens or Extreme Prime Wardens would be the best ones. And finally, we have the stranger in a strange world, Tempest. Our final Prime Warden and our final 4-parter for today. Base Tempest has him deal 1 projectile damage to all bully boys. This is good for softening up or finishing off a bunch of guys, though this power is easily replaced by Grievous Hailstorm for crowd control and Localized Hurricane for damage blitzing or card draw. Now Tempest is a Prime Warden, but in another universe he was on a different team. He is the only non-Freedom 5 member of the Freedom 6, if you don't count Unity or Fright Train. Too bad Tempest's power in this version kinda sucks. I guess his left hand was his wind controlling hand? This power allows him to destroy one of his own cards in order to draw 3 extra cards. As if he needed more methods of drawing cards. This isn't a power I'm willing to use all that often, since he doesn't get extra card plays. So I'd rather keep the prep that I give him. Now, if the extra hurting from Localized Hurricane is being too much, then I might use this power to get rid of it instead of the power on that card, so I can at least get some more cards that way. Otherwise, I'm generally going to use another one of his powers. His Prime Warden's version can be pretty exciting. This one has him use a power to play up to 3 extra cards. Though each time you use the power for this, the environment deals him 3 lightning damage. Now this is a weird case, because the damage isn't coming from the villain, nor an environment card. It's coming from the environment deck, the battle zone itself. I'm not entirely sure why they did this, because as far as I know, it's the only time where the deck itself does the damage, not any target within. My only guess as to why this is to avoid some of the cheats that allow people to avoid damage, but that doesn't even cover a lot of the more obvious ways of doing that. Heck, even Tempest himself, while he can't avoid the damage, still has 2 methods of reducing the damage, and 3 extra cards can really get some work done. Heck, you might have a hard time keeping enough cards in his hand to work it fully. Finally, Tempest's Extreme version is also weird but fun. He can deal 1 target, 1 damage. If that target isn't a character card and has end of turn text, then that specific text is ignored until his next turn. The ability to skip over some effects can be pretty minor in some cases, or pretty major in others. It's a very niche effect, so a lot of the fun here is to see what effects you can stall out. Out of all 4 of these versions, I think Prime Warden's Tempest is the best and my favorite, providing turns where Migdal Tan fully embraces his namesake as Tempest, in all its wild, untamable fury. And that is the first half of the core game hero variants. All that is left to do is the Freedom 5. I hope to see you there. Take care, friends. Now, Rod's Horus of the two Verizon. This is not a Verizon plug. I am not big enough to have sponsors. And since I didn't actually look up which hand it was, let's do it again with the other hand. I guess his right hand was the wind controlling hand. If that target isn't a character card and has an end of text turn, because obviously that's how it works. So my camera lost power while I was recording that last bit. Thankfully, I only had to do the outro.